Oh, blimey, Jenkins, that looks really angry. Have you been putting your cream on that? Eh? What? What? This old thing? Oh yes, I've picked it up at Messrs Ian Bay. Do you like it? What, it sets off my eyes? Oh, you. It's a two-stroke. No, not that kind of stroke. Hello, welcome to Tweed's Garage, where in this video we're doing some more work on the Scott. If you saw the last video, we were busy working on the front and rear wheel, putting new bearings in, taking the old bearings out, putting new bearings in, and a new front tyre, ready to get it rolling again. So if you haven't seen that, go and have a look. But now we'll continue on with that. So first thing we've done was thinks. Took the rear bearings back out again, but I'll tell you all about it in a minute. And then we made some fittings up for the front forks, and thought we'd have a bit more engineering. So we've done the front forks, all the bits for that, and then started work on a spare Pilgrim oil pump. So come on, down to the bench. So when you left me last time, I'd reassembled front and rear wheel with new bearings, and yeah, was ready to put them in and was going to move on to the front forks. Now when I put the rear wheel in, I was struggling to get this brake arm to line up. It was sort of in the wrong place. I was having to sort of twist the wheel to get it on. Either that way or that way, I can't remember. But when I had a look at the drawing again, yes, RTFM, it wasn't sort of too obvious, but this part of the shaft is about 1/4 inch longer than this part of the shaft. And you've got a 50-50 chance of getting it in the wrong way, and I had it in the wrong way because I just couldn't work out why this spacer wouldn't sit where it was meant to sit. It was sitting too far out. So wasn't too upset about it because I wasn't quite happy with how it goes together. When so you can get this bearing in, it goes down to a shoulder there, so you can sort of tap that in, it will go all the way home. You can pop the shaft in, and there's a collar here to secure it, so you can get this shoulder and this bearing and the inner and the outer all in the right place. This bearing you have to sort of tap in over the shaft and into the hub, but there's no back shoulder to it, so it can, you know, it can float one way or the other. And the trouble is when you tap it in, you tend to find that the outer race goes a little bit further than the inner race. Not a lot, but just enough to make the bearing a little bit tight, you know, and you had to sort of knock it back the other way and this way and that way to get it to run, you know, run right. So I wasn't happy with that, so we took it apart again, and then what I'd done was pop the shaft in the lathe and relieve these surfaces with some emery cloth, just to take, you know, not even a thou, just a small amount off of each side of them, so that they were a sliding fit, because they were a really tight fit on the inner race of the bearings. And you don't want that. You want to be able to sort of slide it in, you know, but a secure enough fit so it don't slop around. Because when you tighten these nuts up and the sort of brake hub pulls in and that little bush pulls in there, it tightens the inner races against the shoulders on the inside of the axle and tightens up, secures the inner race to the axle. So done that, eased these surfaces up so they're a nice sliding fit. And then with that done, I could sort of, this bearing was, you know, nice and secure at its home position, put the shaft back in, but then I just had to get this bearing back in this side. And I could have sort of driven it in again with a socket, but decided what to do was turn up some sort of big washers just under the outer diameter of the bearing and sliding over the shaft, and then use that to push both inner and outer parts of the bearing in together at the same time. So needed a big bit of steel bar, round bar to do that. Needed to be 50mm, so I had some 2.5 inch bar stock sitting in the corner. Haven't done much with it, bought it at that factory sale and it's been sitting there, so I needed to sort of get a chunk of material off of that to turn my sort of washers up that I wanted. I haven't got enough room to get it into the bandsaw in the garage. There's just not enough room to swing over a 2 foot length of steel bar in there, and didn't want to get hurty arms cutting it off with a hacksaw, so I decided to pop it on the lathe and part it off. As you can see, just over 2 foot is the capacity of my lathe, but it gave me a chance to use my fixed steady, which I haven't used since I got the lathe, so it was a good sort of exercise in using that. Yeah, and with the tailstock overhanging just slightly, I managed to squeeze it all on and get the tool set over, and then part myself a chunk off, ready to turn up what I needed. And this is what we turned up. So sort of two thick washers. How thick are they? 7.5 millimeters, 0.29 inches for all you imperial chaps out there. So yeah, turn 2 of these up, and then also left from the bit of bar was the end bit I drilled all the way through, so I used this as just a spacer block in my little pack of spacers to do what I wanted to do. So then I put this one on this side against this bearing, and that's pushing against the shoulder, and done the nut up against it on the back side of it, and then pop this one on the other side against the other bearing, and then just use the nut, the axle nuts, to tighten up on here and gradually draw the bearing in. And as I got further in, sort of running out of threaded area on the axle, so this is what I used, this and then a spacer in between, just to give me my thickness to be able to push that bearing all the way in, which worked really nicely. And as you can see, wheel turns over really nicely as well, so I know the bearings are all central and running well. So good job done. Then we move to the forks. As I said, I've done the wheels first. Next job is to do the forks, but there was a couple of things missing on the forks. So have I got a picture of the forks? Hang on. So we've got a couple of parts missing off the front forks. We're missing these pinch bolts on the bottom yoke. So that's just a sort of straight turning and milling exercise. Turn a pair up to go on there. What I had to do with the shaft of the bolts, one side was fine, it was all tapped square and straight, and it wound in no trouble at all. On this left hand side or right hand side, if you're looking from the back of the bike, the threaded hole is sort of at a slight angle, and you found once you'd sort of wound the bolt in a couple of threads, it started binding up on the side of the shaft of the bolt. So this one is a slightly smaller diameter than this one on the plain finish of the shaft, but now they go in nicely. The second thing that's missing is on the top yoke is a clamping system. So you've got sort of I don't know how to describe it, sort of one sort of a dowel with a thread on the end of it, and then the other dowel has a hole through it, and then the thread that goes through the hole in this one, and you have a nut on here, threaded hole, and it pulls it together, and you've got a slight scallop that matches the steering stem, and these butt up against it and pinch it together to fix the top yoke. Unusual system, yeah, a bit convoluted. I mean, normally they just sort of cut a slot in it and a couple of pinch bolts and pull it all together, but this is the way they do it. So what we've done, what we need to do is turn up 2 pieces of stainless steel down to a diameter that will fit in the hole in the yoke each side. One long one to allow to turn on a threaded shaft onto it, and then the other one, this one, that just has a hole drilled through it, and then that'll slide on to that one like that. So yeah, not too bad a job. It's a bit tricky trying to measure everything. Disassembled the fork nut off the top so I could measure the diameter of the shaft, so I could work out what this scallop was. Ignore these sizes, it's what somebody helpfully gave me, but they're all all wrong, all seem apparently wrong. So I sort of went my own way. So this should fit. So I marked this up, ready to turn the shaft on like that. And I did start marking them up and offset the shaft slightly, because the shaft can't be in the middle because you've got this scallop here. Yeah, it would interfere with it, so you need to move the shaft over towards the back, away from the stem of the forks. So sort of worked out roughly where that would go, what size shaft go in there, and then marked on here and here where I need to machine them. So that would be my centre point. You sort of put a dead centre in and clock it in, sort of thing, but they don't fit in my 4-jaw chuck. So then I'd have to make some sort of convoluted system to hold them, and then it'd sort of be difficult to try and repeat, get this to match this, getting it in exactly the right place. So to the lathe, turned up a bit of aluminium like this, making a collet, and then we popped it in the milling machine, done a bit of work on it. And this is what we ended up with. So drilled it out, used the boring head, and bored it out to size for a nice sort of sliding fit. So that goes in there like that. And then left the shoulder at the back of it so that if it's not gripping too well, I wasn't confident it was going to grip really well, when I'm pushing the tool in to turn this down, or pushing the drill through to drill a hole in this, it's not going to push through the back of the collet. We'll call this a split collet. So put a split in it so that when the 3 jaws tighten down, it's just enough to sort of pinch it closed and clamp it tight. And as it was in the vise, it was easy to, because I was working from the centre, and I'd offset this amount to get me to where I want to be. And then so this witness line helps me line it up in the chuck when I sort of swap from one to the other. So hopefully they'll turn out pretty good. So this is that goes in there like that. I've got this mark here. They've blued up the jaws on the chuck, marked a centre line, so I'll get that as close as I can. And then we'll sort of see, I'll line these scribing marks up, and we'll see if it runs fairly close to that centre pop hole, so we can start machining. Okay, to the lathe. We'll see where we are with a hole on centre there. That's not bad. And then we don't have to worry about the centre point of this, because as long as we line that up with that, pop this in there, the hole should be in the same plane as the shaft, not going to turn down. So the next thing I need to do is machine this scallop onto both pieces of this clamping device, whatever you want to call it. So I need to set I'm going to do it with a boring head. So I need to set the boring head up to a diameter of 1.1195. So how am I going to do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I've set my jaws on my vise to that measurement, and I'm going to find the centre of the vise and then install my boring head, and then we'll use this as a gauge to set the boring head to the right diameter. Okay, so we'll just centre this first. Set the boring head up. So just so we don't ram the tool into the vise, just put a fag paper there. Right there. Check it going on. About there, and it should be about there. So there we go. That's sort of set pretty darn close to the diameter that we need to cut. So that's set. So now we've got to set the job up to use this more or less as a fly cutter and cut out that recess in the face of it. So we'll lock that off and set the job up. But the other thing I needed to do was how far I needed to go in. You know, from here from the outside edge to into there. I needed to work that out. So how I'd done that was gauge pins. What are gauge pins? Bear with. Or drill blanks. So they are basically, yeah, like a drill blank. Different sizes, and I think it was the 7/16. So I kept passing them through the hole in the back of the headstock, you know, through the hole. And then of course you had the stem coming through this side, so just kept going up on the sizes until I had a sliding fit between the back of the hole and the front of the fork stem coming in that side, and then that gave me my measurement from the back there to this edge here. So with this distance known, all I've done was subtracted this distance from the total diameter, and that would give me my depth of cut I needed to go in to put this scallop in. And then I knew, you know, when you put it together with a little bit of a gap in between, it would clamp the stem. So once I fiddled around setting up the workpiece, I found this was the best way to grip it in the V-ways of the milling table. I had to pack it up a little bit. Yeah, not the best setup, but it was clamped nice and solidly, and as you can see, it didn't go anywhere. The only thing is I couldn't quite get this up high enough, so last couple of cuts it didn't quite clear through, so there's a bit of an edge down there, just a little burr just there we didn't quite get. So I just clean that up with a file and clean the edges up, and hopefully that will go in and clamp the stem with a little bit of clearance in the middle. That's why I left the washer in there, because I didn't want these to do up tight and not clamp the stem. So hopefully if I've calculated it right, that should sort of tighten it all up. Yeah, bit of a job. I had to change the tip, the all high-speed steel stuff. It just bounced off of this. Luckily I found an old carbide brazed cutter that managed to get through this, and also when machining it, some sort of mystery stainless on the lathe. I think I got through about 5 edges on the carbide insert. It's pretty hard old stuff. So yeah, managed to get that done. So let's get it cleaned up and see if it'll work. So I've just given them a trial fit to see if they clamp the stem on a fork assembly, which they do, and I get a nice sort of spread of contact across the faces of them. So I've got this diameter pretty keyed in, so that's good. And then I measured the outside edges when it was done up tight to see how much clearance I had in the middle. So there's plenty of clearance in the middle there, and that's with them done up tight. So yeah, there's a little bit of give in that. Yeah, if they ever sort of closed up and didn't clamp anymore, I doubt whether they ever will, because this is stainless steel and this is hard as old bullets, this stuff. You could always face off these just to give you a little bit more clearance. But yeah, seemed to work well, so I'm going to stick them in. Now we've got the forks all bolted together, I can take them apart and overhaul them. But I have been gathering information on them, so I've got more of an idea of how they work and what work we might need to do when I take them apart. So I was going to end that here, but I thought as we were sort of engineering-y, and I'd disappeared down a rabbit hole, because as you can see on the Scott, it's got an oil pump fitted already. Now, whenever you join a club, a new mark of motorcycle or motor car, doesn't matter what club you join, there's always a sort of a fable or a legend. You know, there's always something, and it's always, you know, one thing that people go on about. And Scots, it tends to be the Pilgrim oil pump. And but as you see, I've got one on the bike, so I don't really have to worry about it. But it's always handy to have a spare one, judging by how confident people are on the reliability of these. And in the boxes of bits, I did find another Pilgrim oil pump. So this is the spare Pilgrim pump, slightly disassembled. You'll see yeah, what happened with that, but it's the dreaded old Mazak, has these end caps on here. made out of Mazak. For those of you who don't know, it's sort of mix of cheap metals and sort of low melting point, easy to cast. They do make nice castings, but over time it's affected by atmosphere and age, and it sort of starts cracking. You see all round there, see if we can get you in. Yeah, see all round here, it's cracked all round here where there's stresses, because it actually swells as well. So these are swollen to the point that they're over sort of a couple of thou bigger than the hole they were actually in once I'd got them out. But I didn't realise when I first started, so taking one off, I literally had to chisel it off, and these parts of it were so tight in the boards that they broke off the back of the casting. There, this one I've glued back on because I was using it for reference. Yeah, and they were so tight I had to get an easy out on one, pop an easy out in to get that one out, and then the other one, the solid one, I managed to get a pair of grips on the outside edge of it and twist it gently and extract that out of the pump body. So proceeded to dismantle the rest of the pump. I left this end cap on, left it alone for now because I wanted to try and save one because I needed to take measurements. So what you need to do is take the centre out first. The way you take these pumps out, it always says in the manuals on that, you take out the drive out of the middle first. And this is, they do two types. They do a clockwise and anti-clockwise rotating pump. This is, well, looking at it this way, it's anti-clockwise, and the central nut holding the drive gear in is a reverse thread, a left-hand thread. I think if they rotate the other way, it's a right-hand thread, so something to be aware of. So, yeah, there we go. And then you withdraw the scroll, drive scroll out of there. So that's the drive scroll, you see. And then that releases the two pump bodies. There's one in there at the moment, I'll leave it in. And the other one looks like this. This is how the scroll drives it. Yeah, so then with those removed, it allowed me to pop a punch down each bore and gently tap this out of the other end, which I managed to do. So I managed to save it. So this was my reference for taking measurements. Well, I use these holes actually, they're more accurate than this because this is all swollen, but you know, this gave me the pattern for what I needed to make. So with the pump stripped down, and I was able to get to all the holes and the bores, I was able to sort of start measuring everything, and then started working myself out a plan of where all the holes were until I got to a sort of a master plan for plotting all my measurements so I could use the digital readout to drill all my holes. So I sort of made this my 0 point here and then worked in from that corner. So what I needed to do was cut off a chunk of aluminium big enough to make two end plates on, and luckily because they're opposite side pumps at opposite ends, both pump heads are actually the same. Yeah, so they just switch over each end. So I just had to make two of these rather than a left hand and a right hand one, which was quite handy. So yeah, so that was all my sort of measurements to sort of work by. So the first thing I done, rather than dive in and ruin a perfectly good piece of aluminium billet, I got some thick aluminium plate and turned myself up a sort of jig plate. So I machined this up to all the measurements. So I centre drilled it, then drilled all my holes and drilled the holes here, and I can't remember if I bored them or drilled them. I think I just drilled them once they'd been centre drilled, and then a bigger drill, then a bigger drill, so they didn't wander off too much. And then with that done, it allowed me to stick the plates on and see how close I'd got with my measurements. So with the first plate made, I could then screw it to the pump, make sure all my screw holes lined up, and this is the index hole for the lock pin for the knob. And what I found was I was slightly off on both holes. The measurement was slightly out, so I was able to measure this difference and correct that on the drawings. But I also found it was slightly different end to end. So, you know, these things were made in their sort of hundreds or thousands, probably done on manual machines. So what's actually going on is these holes aren't quite parallel. They're sort of slightly at an angle, so the distances apart at each end is slightly different. So managed to get my measurements on there, so I knew where I was going when I machined them up. So with all my measurements, and what I've done is I've just made another proving plate to go on there, and that lined up a lot more satisfactorily. I mean, it was slightly out on this end because this is the end that was slightly different to the other end, but it gave me somewhere to work from. So grab my offcut of aluminium, pop it in the vise, and with it machined down to size and squared off, I could pop it in the mill and start working on it. So went from the drawings, used the digital readout, centre drilled, then drilled all the holes for both plates on the one piece of aluminium. So this is as far as I got. I've cut a piece off of that piece of aluminium, cut it to size, milled it down to size, so we have to take the least material off at the end, and then popped it on the mill and drilled all the holes. That's a misdrill, ignore that. Hopefully by the time we milled this down, that'll disappear, so that's not an issue. And it's on an area that's there's no oil around here, so not an issue. But yeah, that will disappear. So we're carrying on, and it has a through tapped hole on one side and then a blind hole in the other side. This is for the spring to sit in, and then this one is for the adjusting knob to screw into. And this changes your rate of oil feed from the pump. So that done, I needed to create these raised surfaces, these two to, you know, for the spring, and this is actually a cam face for the oil pump. I'll sort of show you how that works in a minute. And then also a little raised area for the pin, the sort of locking pin for this handle, which also needed a bit, once it was machined, needed a little bit machined off to allow clearance for the back of the knob. So I then had to move over to the rotary table. So bolted the rotary table down, got the mill set to the centre of the rotary table. So we clocked that in. And then clamped my block onto the rotary table using the centre drill holes for each of the holes for the pump lugs and the spring pockets, using a centre finder in the mill, just sort of dropping that down, leaving the aluminium block loose. The workpiece would centralise itself on the centre finder on the mill, and then just gently clamp the piece to the rotary table. And then once that's done, just sort of proceed to mill out the spring pocket and the cams one at a time, just doing the same thing. Do one down to a set depth, then move on to the next one, recenter it on the new profile, same as before, then clamp it down, then run the mill round down to the sort of set level, and then move it along and do the last two. So that was those two profiles. And because it was all still a block with sort of 4 rings milled into it, it was still nice and flat on the back, so it was an easy case of flipping it over and then milling the 2 raised profiles on the other side down to depth. And then afterwards I followed with the correct size drills, and then with those done I tapped the thread into the holes so they're ready to go. So with all the holes drilled and the profiles milled, it was just a case of milling all the surplus material off of it and milling the plate down to its final thickness from each side. So went round the oil pump cams and spring pockets, got that down to size, and then flipped it over and then machined off the other face, just leaving the 2 little shields for the locking pins. With the locking pin shoulders milled, I then centred on the threaded holes and milled away the clearance for the inside face of the adjusting knobs. And then flipped it over and set it up and machined down the outside face to complete the machining. I also centralised on each of the holes and dropped down an end mill just to create my screw pockets on the outside face. And there it is. And yeah, quite pleased with it. It's not complete, as you can see, because it doesn't look like this, but all the holes are in the right places. Adjusting knob goes in there, and that's the spring pocket for the piston for the oil pump. It's to sort of aid it moving backwards and forwards. Another feature we had to mill on it, which you can't quite see. Let's see if you can see here. So I said it was a cam. So as you can see, this is actually at an angle and then dips down in the middle. It's flat up at the top there. So what happens? This is what gives the pump its oscillating. It's got a little foot on the back of the body of the oil pump, and it rides on that cam area. So you see it sort of drops down to the bottom, comes back up the other way, and it pushes it back out again like that. So just a tiny amount, just moves it like that as it's rotating, and that gives you a sort of pumping action. And then these are timed ports to allow the oil in and out at the right times. So the last thing to do was to set this up back in the milling vise, and then use my angle blocks to set these up and mill them at 7 degrees, which is what I managed to measure on these, these original ones. It's 7 degrees. So milled it at 7 degrees, but leaving a slight flat land at the top for this pump, piston, pump body, whatever you want to call it. So the sort of foot of it is running on a flat surface like that. But because this is cast, they've cast it in. It has actually got, you cannot see, but there is a sort of dip at the bottom, just there. It's dipped at the bottom, and it's actually flat across as well. So it's flat at the bottom, but because I've milled that, because that's at an angle, you can see it's only the back of the foot that's resting on that cam. So what I need to do is, with a file, is actually sort of file this by hand. So file this flat, a little flat V at the bottom, and then blend it in round the sides and slightly flatten off some of these sides towards the centre, so that this rides round nice and smoothly. I've just got to, round that step off at the top as well. But that's what gives you your pumping action. It's not a lot, it's not a huge amount, tiny little amount. So this goes backwards and forwards. And then what happens is the adjuster comes in and rests at the back of the pump. And what it does, it just sort of, you can adjust it, it sort of lifts it off the bottom of the cam gradually. So actually sort of, as that moves that up, there you go, if I adjust it right out, so it's not touching the cam there, but then it just starts to engage with the cam up the top there, so you get a lot smaller stroke. And as you adjust it out, it rests at the bottom of the cam, and you get your full stroke. So that gives you your sort of maximum pumping. So that's something to fiddle around with later. So there you go. Quite pleased with that. I will admit I did sort of go around with a file just to knock the machining marks off, just to keep it nice and flat on the gasket surface. But as I put about 8 hours into these, I'm going to stop machining now. I'm going to stop whilst I'm ahead, because you guarantee, yeah, the more machining you do on these parts, the more chances you've got of mucking it up at the last minute. So we're going to quit whilst we're ahead, as there's only 2 of them. I'm going to blue this plate up and then scribe on all my outer lines for the pumps, and then cut them out with a hacksaw and file them to shape. So yeah, so there you go. Once that's done, we're all ready to assemble the pump. So I think in the next video we'll have a sort of Pilgrim pump reassembly, and maybe try and find some way of driving it, and yeah, getting oil into it and out of it. So yeah, we saved the pump by replacing this horrible Mazak. Yes. Victory over Mazak. It's also got Mazak drippers in here, so it's an earlier one. You're meant to be able to take these out, and there's a ball and a spring behind, but yeah, I'm not touching them. There they will stay, and I'll just blow cleaner through or something, just to clean them out and check that they're working. So there you go. Heavy on the old machining, but I know some of you like that. And then we will continue next time with reassembling the Pilgrim pump, and yeah, seeing if it works, or sort of making a test rig so we can test it before we put it on. That'll be quite handy to be able to sort of set up the drip rate before you put it on the bike and even started it. So yeah, I might look into that. So that'll be next time. If you like the video, give us a little like. And if you want to see more videos, subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, but helps me out. Okay, so I'll see you next time. All right, cheerio. What's that, Jenkins? Yeah, it'll heal. Just stop picking it. Bye. Bit more work on the Scott. So, hello. me. With the wheel bearings on front and rear wheels. Drop in and have a look of that. So come and have a look at the